Welcome back, AI curious folk, to AI Ramblings podcast, episode 90. I'm Michael Parekh, your human AI guide. Again, as usual, a lot going on. Let's get started. Let me lay out today's theme. Government and corporate AI stakes are getting bigger. And this is happening just as public investors soon will have to weigh the consequences of everything that's going on, not just the presumably more sophisticated private investors to date. So 3 events I want to talk about, and then I'll discuss my individual and overall takes. The White House, number one, hit a compromise, an executive order on AI regulation. They basically whittled down the whole debate from 60 to 90 days to 30 days for the big model companies to submit their most powerful AI models for inspection, as it were. And so that's item number one I want to talk about. Number two, China is still trying to figure out how much it wants to cooperate with the US, especially in terms of letting NVIDIA chips into the country, especially as its own chip champion, Huawei, and SMIC, which is its equivalent of TSMC, which is the Taiwanese-based huge fab company that makes all of our chips that we use for everything, not just for AI, but including the stuff in our cars and refrigerators. I call TSMC the Federal Reserve of the tech AI industry, because how much they decide to invest and make in terms of chip fabs basically governs how fast the whole industry grows or not grow as fast going forward. And so that's the second item I wanted to discuss. And the third are just regulatory-driven headwinds in the US, where the AI data centers don't get built as fast as the companies would like it because of a lot of regulatory pushback, resource pushbacks, power, water, etc. So those are the 3 things I want to talk about and give you my takes. So the first one, as I talked about, the president, after much jostling and negotiating between the pro-AI folks, the companies on one hand, and then the lot of folks on the other side who want more regulation on AI, especially from the state level, they hit a compromise. And it looks right now, none of the parties on either side are that happy, which means it's probably a good deal. So for now, the companies will agree to about a 30-day review process on their latest models. And this is particularly important, especially for the big ones, Anthropic and OpenAI, because they're going through their big mega AI IPOs, and there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on that front. And so if anything goes wrong, any negative developments in terms of cybersecurity, et cetera, and Anthropic, as you know, has been very focused on this. I've written extensively on this. There'll be details in the show notes as usual. But so the companies need a little bit of this regulatory cover, as it were, to make sure it's there as insurance. In the meantime, they want clean, unblocked runways to do whatever they want at the pace they want in terms of scaling the AIs, in terms of funding the AI, build infrastructure, etc., and in terms of course, trying out various things and what sticks in terms of AI agents, in terms of both consumer and business customers. So there's a lot of pros and cons there, and they're trying to find a middle road. And this is all going on, remember, in a context where in the US, almost every state has its own array of AI regulations that they want to bring into the mix, and the federal government is against that. They've not been able to stop that to this day, and this is all going to happen both through the November elections and post the November election. So there's a lot of regulatory issues around this, which also ties to my third point about the rate at which the AI data centers are built. So both of those are kind of connected. But overall, this was a step probably in the right direction in terms of this executive order being signed and getting a little bit of a green light to moving the models forward. The most important being Mythos, which is Anthropic's latest model, which is still not yet released in the wild. It's still being hand-released to government agencies, major companies, other agencies and partners, etc. So not broadly available, and also very expensive, as I wrote about yesterday. So take a look at that post if you're interested. Second is a couple of reports on China's Huawei struggling with their AI chip design expansion. Remember, they've been kind of curtailed by lack of access to the latest, the best AI chip design lithography equipment from leading companies like ASML in the Netherlands. And without that, they are already 2 or 3 years behind in terms of their chips relative to the US, what's available to the US and European vendors, especially the companies like NVIDIA and their roadmap. And Huawei, right now, the latest research shows that they may be as much as 5 or 6 years or more behind in the next 2 or 3 years because of what they have to do to make their chips work without the access to the latest lithography equipment relative to the US. And so China as a government has a key set of decisions to make, especially given the broad range of trade talks that are going on between the two countries. The second visit by President Xi is supposed to be this September on the 24th, when he presumably visits the White House. And so both countries are trying to figure out how to thread the needle. And I've written a lot about this. If you just Google thread the needle on AI reset to zero, you'll find a lot of detailed posts on this. So both countries know that neither of them can literally do everything they want to with AI without the other. We can't manufacture all the AI related hardware, especially for the physical world AI, just in the US. So I'm talking about not just iPhones and computers and so on, but also AI-driven cars, AI-driven robots, AI-driven drones. All of that requires the global supply chain, and it's a very complex supply chain. And most regulators don't understand the depth and breadth of that complexity. And so both countries need to figure out how to thread the needle. And so the issue for China is going to be, how much do they let of NVIDIA's product and other US companies' product through the front door, and how much they continue to get without front door access and get it indirectly through other countries, et cetera. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And besides NVIDIA, Apple and Tesla are the two other nexus points between the US and China, because both of those companies have huge stakes in China, big markets. And those three, so Tim Cook, who's going to be promoted to the chairman job at Apple in September as John Ternus takes over as CEO. And then, of course, Elon with, by that time, presumably his SpaceX will be public. So we'll have $2 trillion plus companies public with a lot of interest in both countries. And then, of course, Jensen Huang, who continues to play the role as ambassador between the two countries, balancing the interests on both sides, and especially because Jensen, of course, is from Taiwan, and he's growing his footprint. NVIDIA is going from 1,000 people in Taipei to over 4,000, deeper relationships with TSMC. They're going to become Taiwan Semiconductor's biggest customer, supplanting Apple. And the two companies together, as I've noted before in several pieces, together are already close to 50% of TSMC's capacity. And TSMC, as I said before, is the Federal Reserve, as it were, of chip supply. And so they kind of maintain the band in which the supply goes up and down around the world. So that takes us to point number 3 that I wanted to talk about, which is the US AI data center build out. The schedules there seem to be slipping despite the best efforts of the Googles and the Microsoft and Amazons, and of course, Elon and Meta, in terms of spending hundreds of billions of dollars this year, next year. We're already going to be north of $2 trillion in the next year or two, and way beyond that, presuming the markets continue to be receptive, public and private. But the regulatory impediments are very much there. I've written a lot about this, and some new data on some of these headwinds that are making the schedule slip on the data center build out. And that is also going to affect near term the pricing for the latest and greatest AI agent models. We're already moving away from subscription models to where it's all you can eat to a la carte. And so customers, especially business customers, are already having serious sticker shock as they see their AI compute bills just rocket up, et cetera. So all of this is tied to this business of AI data center build-out schedules. And there's a lot of detail here to kind of monitor, which yours truly will continue to do. But I wanted to highlight this as my third key point. And the timing between the building of these centers and the executed plans remains the principal volatility risk to the AI tech wave for investors, especially now for public investors soon, not just the private ones that have had to monitor this. And this is going to accelerate, not decelerate. So my overall take on these 3 points remains that the US and China remain in the pole position on AI infrastructure build-outs, despite all the regulatory and geopolitical issues that I've talked about, touched on, etc. The US continues to have the edge, of course, in AI chips, the latest roadmaps, supply chains, etc. China, however, has the lead on the power front. Their power deployment is far ahead of the US. Plus, they also have the manufacturing ecosystems that are far deeper than the US in terms of automobiles and robots and all these other things that people like Elon are pointing to as markets that are worth trillions. And so China is a very key piece of this. It's not going to be buildable without China, without Taiwan and TSMC, regardless of how many hundreds of billions of dollars they invest in the US to build up infrastructure. It's not just about money, it's about people and the capable employees that can build this stuff, maintain this stuff. And those people are measured in the tens and hundreds of thousands, which is beyond the capability of the US by itself. So that's the important underlying issue to keep in mind. So that's the big issue, big theme I wanted to talk about in terms of the corporate and government headwinds and challenges getting bigger ahead of these companies. The next point I want to touch on is the gadget AI section. And here I've written a little bit about Microsoft's big build conference. I talked about it a couple of days ago. One of the things that came out of Satya Nadella, CEO, talking about AI devices for the office. This was a new twist. They're working closely with Qualcomm, which remains one of the big providers of mobile chips for cell phones and devices and computers. And they have a project called Solara, which is interesting. I will put up a couple of links where there are videos on this. They had a couple of concept gadgets that they showed off that would be used in the office. One's an Alexa with a small TV type of a gizmo that would stay on one's office table. And the other one is essentially it looks like a laptop, but it's a lanyard badge card. And both are computers, essentially, with screens and cameras and sensors and so on. And the idea, and they had a number of videos in terms of how this would be used, is these things would essentially run AI agents seamlessly, not just like asking questions as AI search, but actually AI agents that are doing things seamlessly around you. And it's very interesting for geekheads like me. It's very cool to watch. These are the first new gadget type of prototypes that we've seen, aside from the consumer side of things. I've talked a lot about watches and wristbands and smart glasses and AirPods with cameras. This is different. The badges, etc., are different. So it's kind of cool to see this. And there are a couple of videos, a lot of discussions by a couple of people out there that I've linked in the show notes. So do take a look at that if this intrigues you. But Project Solara, especially companies like Qualcomm, MediaTek in China, etc., these are all going to be important to kind of watch, which I'm going to lead into the question section of our show today. What intrigues me the most about these office AI devices, as I saw these videos, to me, it was really cool to kind of see how some of these gadgets that are entirely different form factors than smartphones, with sensors, with cameras that can observe things and record things for agents that are running on the devices, and then seamlessly integrate with laptops and other things. Again, a lot of work, software and hardware to be done. So a lot of this is just prototype kind of hand waving stuff, but it's very intriguing to see the possibilities of these types of devices in an office environment, which we haven't seen. So that was the most intriguing of this demonstration. And that's what gets me most excited. So the next question was, what's my chief concern? Once you see this, while you're seeing this, it becomes very clear that the security concerns around these kinds of devices are off the charts. You will have AI agents running on these things, not just on your laptop and your phone, but now these devices that are sensing everything, recording everything. So imagine you're walking around with an office badge on your neck or on your person, and it's recording everything, walking around, getting coffee, whatever. And the societal and regulatory issues of privacy and what's recorded, what's controlled, what's not controlled, are off the charts with these devices. Also, this is a huge, obviously, cyber security and hacking surface that is unprecedented. So huge amounts of security issues. As cool as these devices are, it'll take us years to sort out how to actually manage these things from a societal point of view, the creepiness point of view, from the point of view of managing the security of all these agents, not just running around on our computers and our phones, but now on these types of devices that are in addition to the ones that we're already thinking about, which are like the AI smart glasses and so on. And I've written a lot about that. So that would be the core set of questions, more questions than answers, but we're going into a brave new world, as it were. So that kind of sums it up for this episode of AI Ramblings number 89. And I want to thank you for joining us. Today's AI Reset to Zero piece is 1106. I talked about the Anthropic mythos earning just high pricing that I want to make sure you take a look at. It kind of ties into a lot of the issues that we've discussed. And welcome you back tomorrow, Thursday. Thank you for joining us, AI Curious folk. Stay tuned.